A man rode onto a piece of raw ground in 1880 with a wagon, a team, and whatever water sat in the barrel behind his seat. When that barrel ran dry, he ran dry with it. Guess wrong about where the water sat, and by the next summer, he was broke, or buried, or crawling back east with his hat in his hand. So he learned to read what was already in front of him. The grass, the trees, the way the low ground held the morning. The land had been drawing him a map the whole time. He only had to learn how to look at it. That map is still there. It is on your ground. It is on the piece you are thinking about buying. Right now, this morning, it is showing. I am going to walk you across it the same way that man did. Before you hand a driller $5,000 to point at a spot your own boots could have found by breakfast. Most folks who buy a piece of land and start fretting about water do one of two things. They call a man with a rig, or they call a fellow with a forked stick who charges to wander the property and jerk when the stick dips toward the dirt. Both of them will take your money. One of them at least leaves you a hole in the ground. A drilled well today runs $3,000 to $15,000, and the average sits somewhere around $7,000 or $8,000. That is before the pump, before the pressure tank, before the wire that runs it. You are paying $25 to $65 a foot for a man to go find water that hides from the truck seat. And most of the time, he drills where you sent him. The corner by the house, the flat by the driveway, the spot that was handy for his rig. The ground had an opinion about where its water sat. The well man was happy to let you skip asking it. Read the surface first. Then you will know whether you are paying that rig to confirm what you already found, or paying it to guess and hope. I have walked onto a piece the seller swore was bone dry, stood in the back corner of it at dawn, and watched a green stripe cut across the low ground plain as a painted line. Water the whole time. He either read the ground poorly, or he read it fine and kept quiet. Made little difference to me. The grass told on him either way. I read a piece of ground in an order. It starts with the grass, and it starts at first light. Walk your low ground at dawn before the sun climbs and burns the dew off. Look at the grass, just one part of it. Look for a line. Where water moves under the surface, shallow, the grass above it drinks better than the grass on either side. It comes in greener. It comes in taller. It stays green deep into the dry part of summer, when the rest of the pasture has gone the color of straw. That green stripe running through a dead dry field is a buried river. It is moving 3 feet under your boots, and the grass is telling on it. The old Cowboys called that reading the draw. Water follows the low ground, and it leaves a green thread behind it every step of the way. You can walk that thread, follow it uphill, and it thins out and points at where the water rises closest to the top. Follow it downhill, and it widens toward where it wants to pool. Cost you a morning and your own 2 eyes. Now lift your head off the grass and look at the trees. Look for the trees nobody planted. A cottonwood, a willow, standing on their own in open country, miles from any old homestead that would explain why they are there. Those 2 trees are what a hydrologist calls phreatophytes. That is a $10 word for a plain thing. Their roots drink straight from the water table. They ignore the rain and send roots down to standing groundwater and pull from it year-round. The United States Geological Survey put its name on this. Cottonwood and willow growing wild are a near certain sign of reachable groundwater under them. Most of the water those trees pull comes from ground where the water table sits within about 20 feet of the surface, often closer. A lone willow in a dry draw is more than shade. It is a well marker that grew itself. It found the water, and then it stood over the spot, waving for 50 years. The man riding through in 1880 knew that before he could read a word. Green tree standing alone in dry country means dig here. There is a whole book of these plants if you want to keep reading past the trees. Willows and cottonwoods say water within reach. But look lower at the small stuff growing in the wet draws, and it will tell you how close that water sits. Cattails are the loudest. A stand of cattails means standing water at the surface, or within a foot of it, most of the year. Where cattails grow, you quit looking for water. You are standing in it. Rushes and sedges, the round, dark green stems that come up thick in a low spot, mean the same thing, a step drier. Water within a foot or two. Reeds, horsetail, that bright bottle green fuzz down in a seep, all of them are thirsty plants that seed themselves only where their feet stay wet. They are the land's own gauge, reading you the depth for free. A man who learns 6 plants can walk a strange 40 acres and tell you within an afternoon where the water is highest and where it lies deepest. The plants sort themselves by how much water they can reach. Read the plants, and you have read the water table without turning a single shovel of dirt. The animals will back them up if you watch at the right hour. Every creature on that land has to drink. Watch a game trail at dusk, and it will thicken and braid together as it runs downhill. All the little paths joining into one worn rut, and that rut is aimed at water like an arrow. Follow the deer, and you follow their thirst. Bees do it plainer still. A honeybee flies a straight beeline to water and back, all day in the same lane. Sit near a working line of them in the evening and watch which way the loaded ones fly home to drink. The old-timers steered off a beeline more than once. At dusk, watch the low ground for birds dropping in and insects gathering in a column over one spot. Life stacks up over water. It always has. The land feeds you the answer through everything living on it, if you slow down enough to read it. The reason the surface can talk to you at all comes down to how water behaves once it soaks into the ground. Water underground is lazy. It runs downhill, same as water on top, only slower, and through gravel and sand instead of over open rock. It collects in the low seams. It rides along a layer of clay it cannot soak through and pushes toward the lowest place it can reach. Where that underground water rides close to the top, 2 things happen up where your boots are. The soil above it stays damp longer because water wicks upward through fine dirt the way lamp oil climbs a wick. That damp feeds the grass, and the grass answers by coming in greener along the seam. And the deep-rooted trees, the cottonwood and the willow, tap straight into that shallow seam and thrive while the shallow-rooted plants around them go thirsty. The green line and the lone tree are the same fact, told twice. Both of them are the water table drawing itself on the surface in a language older than any drill. Learn to read that language, and you start seeing every raw field as a map of where the water runs. If a plain morning walk that reads your land better than a $5,000 rig is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe, and I will keep bringing you the old ways one at a time. There is a third tell, and it is the one most folks miss because it burns off by 9 in the morning. Do. Walk the same field at first light 2 mornings running. The high ground and the sandy ground dry fast, but there will be a patch, usually down in the low draw, where the dew hangs on. The grass there is soaked while 30 feet away it is already dry. That patch is sitting over water. The ground beneath it is cool and damp from below, so the morning dew clings instead of lifting. Push your thumb into the dirt there. If it goes in easy and comes out dark and cool, you have found the top of your water without a shovel. There is another version of this you can do on a still morning in the cool part of the year. Look low across the field with the light coming at you sideways and watch for a thin ground fog that lies in one draw while the rest of the field is clear. Warm, damp ground breathing into cold morning air. Fog sits where the water sits. The old-timers watched for that from the wagon seat and steered toward it. Down toward the bottom of that wet draw, walk slow and watch for a seep, a place where the grass is green and actually wet underfoot in a dry spell, water rising to the surface on its own. That is the table-breaking ground. Find a seep, and you have found free water that has been running since before this country had a name on any map. And walk a dry creek bed like it still owes you something, because it does. A wash that only runs after a hard rain still carries water under its sand the rest of the year. The stream went underground, that is all. It is down there right now, moving through the gravel it left behind, hidden under a lid of dry sand. Read the bend. On the outside of a curve in a dry wash, where the last flood dug the channel deepest, the water rides closest to the top. Look for the spot that stays green longest, or where a willow leans out over the sand. Dig there, in the outside bend, below the shade, and you will very often hit damp sand and then water a few feet down. The men crossing dry country lived off that one. A dry river is a full river with a lid on it. You dig the lid off in the right place, and it fills your bucket. One more thing the ground tells you, and it is about which way the slope faces. A north slope keeps its moisture. The sun rides low across it, so the dew lasts, the snow lingers, and the grass holds green weeks longer than the south slope across the draw. When you are choosing where on a piece to sink a shallow well or lay out a garden, the cool north side of a draw will carry water shallower and longer than the baked south side. Same rain falls on both. The one that keeps it is the one that turns its back on the afternoon sun. Now, where two draws come together is where I look hardest. Water in the ground behaves like water on top. Two low seams meeting means two flows of underground water joining into one. The grass is greenest there. The trees are biggest there. If the whole piece has water, that junction is where it rides highest and gives the most. The men who picked the old homestead sites knew this in their boots. Walk any 100-year farmstead and look where they put the house and the well. 9 times out of 10, it sits just above where two draws meet, on the first dry rise over the joining. Close to the water, high enough to stay dry. They read the ground and let it place the well for them. You can do the same thing on raw land in a morning. Find where the green threads join. That is your spot. Once the ground has shown you where the water is, you have got choices, and they cost a lot less than a rig. If the water sits within 10 or 12 feet, a shallow dug well or a driven point well reaches it for a few $100s in pipe and a weekend of work. Men watered whole families that way for 200 years. A driven point is the cheapest of all, a slotted pipe with a hard steel tip pounded straight down into that shallow water with a sledge and a drive cap, one section at a time until it hits wet sand and draws. Bolt a pitcher pump on top and you are drinking. The whole outfit fits in the bed of a truck and costs less than a single foot of what the rig man charges by the foot. If you found a live seep, you box it. A spring box is a buried tank or a ring of stone set right where the water breaks ground, so the water fills clean from below and runs off the top into a pipe. Gravity does the hauling. Clean water to your stock tank around the clock, and the power company stays out of it. And if you found the low junction where the draws meet, that is where a stock pond wants to go. Dam the draw just below the joining, let the shallow water and the runoff fill it, and you have watered livestock off a spot the ground picked, instead of a spot the dozer operator found handy. Same water. Read 3 ways, put to 3 uses, all of it located with a walk. Now, I will tell you what this does and where it stops, because a man who only tells you the good half is selling you something. Reading the surface finds you shallow water. The green line, the willow, the dew, the seep, those point at water riding close to the top, the first 10 or 20 feet. For a lot of land, that is all you ever need. A shallow well, a spring box, a stock pond dug in the right draw. It leaves the deep aquifer alone. 300 feet down is the rig's honest job. And if your shallow signs come up empty across the whole piece, that is real information too. It tells you the easy water sits deep here, and now the rig is money well spent instead of money thrown. I will tell you where I have been fooled, because it matters. A wet spring can grow a green line over water that dries up by August. I have read a draw in April that looked like a sure thing and stood in the same spot dusty in the heat of summer. That was a perched pocket, a little shallow water sitting on a clay lens, playing at being the real table. It fed the grass in the wet and gave out in the dry. I trust one morning less than I used to. I read a piece across the seasons if I can, and where waiting is a luxury I lack, I dig. When the surface points you at a spot, you dig a test hole before you build your life around it. A post hole digger, and one afternoon settles it. Down 4 feet, and either the hole weeps water in overnight, or it sits dry and tells you to keep walking. That cheap hole is the difference between the real table and a spring pocket that quits on you. This leaves the driller his work. It just puts you in charge of him. Now you walk the man to the green line, to the willow, to the seep, and you tell the rig where to stand. You are paying him to reach the water you already located, instead of paying him to go hunting on your dime. The fellow who wants $9,000 or the one with the forked stick needs you to believe water is a mystery only he can solve. It was plain fact to the people who settled this country with a wagon and a shovel. They read the grass, followed the green, dug under the lone tree, and drank. The rig was 100 years off. They had the low ground at dawn, and that was enough. That knowledge is still here. It just went quiet while everybody learned to reach for the phone instead of walking the draw at first light. So before you sign for a piece of land, and long before you call anybody with a rig, go walk it yourself at dawn. Read the green line. Find the tree that seeded itself. Watch where the dew hangs on. Note where the draws meet. Then come tell me what the ground showed you. A green thread cutting across a dry field? A lone willow standing where no hand planted it? Or a seller swearing a wet piece is bone dry while the dew hangs on and calls him a liar? Put it in the comments. I read them. The land already drew you the map.